Ottawa is ramping up defense spending.
We will ensure that every dollar is invested wisely, including by prioritizing made-in-Canada manufacturing and supply chains. We should no longer send 3/4 of our defense capital spending to America.
The increased funding announced on Monday would bring us in line with NATO's guideline of spending 2% of our GDP on defense. But the Alliance's Secretary General is calling for a new spending target ahead of the NATO summit later this month. So here for a closer look is the Globe and Mail's Laura Stone, who is joining us from Ottawa this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
So this new defense spending target is estimated to amount around 15 to 20 billion in additional funding. So where is all that money going to go?
Well, quite a major announcement from Prime Minister Carney yesterday, accelerating this plan to spend 2% of Canada's GDP by 5 years. A lot of this money, Anne-Marie, seems to be going towards personnel. We heard from Prime Minister Carney yesterday during his announcement saying essentially, look, members of the Canadian forces simply aren't paid enough. And we know that the military has had difficulty recruiting and retaining staff. So that's going to be a large portion of the money. They're also going to be fixing and upkeeping a lot of their equipment and vehicles. And we also learned that the Coast Guard is likely to move into the national defense portfolio. So there's some modernization going on along with the military as well. But a big boost for Canada's military spending. And we have yet to see from the Liberal government how they're budgeting all this. And that has been, of course, one of the criticisms from the Conservatives, who have supported the boost in military spending, but they want to see exactly where the money is coming from. So lots of unanswered questions until the fall, when the Liberal government says they'll be releasing their budget.
Boy, we've been hearing for years in this country about trying to reach that 2%. Sounds like we're going to do it this year, but then next NATO Leaders Summit, the Alliance is expected to boost that guideline now to 5%. So just as we hit the old target, there's a new one. How far will Carney's spending increase go in the eyes of this alliance? Are they going to acknowledge the fact that we hit the 2%, or is it still not going to be enough?
I think there is an acknowledgement and a support for what Canada is doing. We heard as well from the United States saying thank you to Canada for making this commitment. So there's sort of two storylines going on. Of course, domestically, which there have been lots of calls for Canada to increase spending and meet that NATO target. And then there's Canada, what's happening with Canada and the United States. We have the G7 coming up next week. There's also a meeting with NATO later in June where they will be discussing potentially increasing military spending. So I think it's been certainly acknowledged and applauded by the international community. And we heard from Prime Minister Carney yesterday, he doesn't expect the spending to stagnate. He does expect to spend more. And so this could be the new normal for Canada to be spending billions more. And the reason that Prime Minister Carney said this is because we need to diversify and get away from our reliance on the United States, look to Europe and other allies as we are still engaged in this trade dispute, and we can no longer trust our relationship with the United States the way that we once did.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because, listen, G7 starts on the 15th. Interestingly enough, the day after Donald Trump's birthday and this big party that he promises will be the biggest invest that anyone's ever seen. So that's happening in Kananaskis. It starts on the 15th. This will be Mark Carney's first time as Prime Minister hosting something like this. It'll be Trump's first visit back to Canada in a long time. What will you be watching for? What should Canadians be watching for as this summit unfolds?
Well, certainly, I mean, the summit itself, it will be interesting to see how the leaders all come together, what they cooperate on, what their kind of final communique and announcements are, and how they collaborate, what their priorities are. But of course, the big storyline to watch is that dynamic between President Trump and Prime Minister Carney, and whether there is any resolution to the tariff war. And we know that there's been talks going on between Canada and the United States. We'll see if any of that kind of comes to fruition and how President Trump receives Mr. Carney. He's spoken very warmly of the new prime minister. Of course, he's very mercurial as well. So that dynamic, and we know that the Mexican president will be attending as well. So there'll be lots of discussion, I think, potentially on the sidelines about trade and that tariff relationship. But everyone's watching to see how Donald Trump reacts, how he reacts to Mark Carney, and if there's going to be any end to the punishing tariff war that he instituted on Canada and some of his key allies.
Yeah, interesting the word you used relationship, because as we know, in any trade negotiation, a lot of negotiation has to do with relationship. And Mark Carney inviting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the summit only months after the RCMP accused his government of murdering a Canadian Sikh leader in BC. But, you know, Carney pointing out that they are the second largest market in the world and we are looking for new partners. So how can Carney look to shore up ties with India while also appearing strong in our response to those allegations? I mean, the former leader of the Liberal Party on the floor of the House of Commons accused Modi's government of murder on Canadian soil.
Those are excellent questions, Anne-Marie, and Prime Minister Carney was asked this at a press conference, and he's trying to kind of justify it as separating the economic concerns with the security concerns with India. And he says, look, there's an ongoing investigation into that other issue, but Canada needs to look to other partners, including places that Canada has had tensions with previously under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, India and China and others. And so it's kind of a start of a resetting of the relationship. Whether, though, that there's an appetite for that in Canada, I think remains to be seen. I think there's a lot of backlash to Prime Minister Carney's decision to invite Mr. Modi to Canada, but we'll see if he's able to kind of tread both worlds here and separate those accusations from the economic concerns that Canada has to deal with.
What will be so fun is like grab a big bowl of popcorn and watch all the body language, because remember the body language between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Modi when he was in India. Now everybody's going to be here in Kananaskis. Hopefully nobody's going to get evacuated. Anyway, it's a lot to watch for. Yeah, as it all unfolds. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.